For the last 10 years, Kenya has been mulling over a proposal to set up a warehouse receipt system in a bid to stem the post-harvest losses that runs to almost 50% in this country. And finally, last year, this dream came into reality with the passing of the Act. This week on Inside the Government, we discuss the warehouse receipt system with the chairperson of the council, Ngige. We will be trying to find out what they have done so far, the grounds they have managed to cover, and what is the way forward. Thank you very much indeed for finding time to be with us on Inside the Government. I mean, it's proper to say almost 1 year down the line since the Act came into force. And how many months now? Almost 11 months down the line since the council was formed and operationalized. What would you say has been your biggest achievement yet? Well,
thank you, Brian. I think one of the biggest achievements really in the establishment of the Warehouse Receipt Systems Council is the putting in place a very well coordinated and very well resourced in terms of expertise board of directors, representing both the government interests and also the private sector interests. And I think that has really been an achievement because together we've been able to sit down and look at the task ahead of us and collectively agree together with management in terms of how the council will be running. And first of all, to get educated in terms of government systems and government procedures, and to understand the obligations that we hold, and also to understand the expectations from the stakeholders. So this is what has been happening over the 11 years. We've had chances of speaking to the stakeholders. We've traveled to some of the bread baskets of this country, Uasin Gishu, Nakuru, talking to farmers, talking to the government representatives, and trying to get the idea in terms of how would they want to see storage of agricultural produce become useful in their businesses. So it's been a year of awareness creation, a year of learning, and a year of learning the ropes, so to say.
Mm-hmm. Probably, maybe you can help our people understand what is a warehouse receipt system and how does it work?
All right, let me step a little bit back and say that a lot of us have seen the warehouses, the silos that are all over the country. And these silos have mainly been known as the NCPB silos. And these are warehouses, and they have been used to store all sorts of products, agricultural products. And they normally would be inspected and licensed by the Agriculture, Food and Agriculture Authority. And they collect grain and they distribute grain. They provide services for the farmers. And this is what a lot of us understand these silos to be, or these warehouses to be. And they will continue to be so. The difference between the what I can call the kawaida warehouses and now the ones that will be working with the Warehouse Council Receipt, with the Warehouse Receipt Council, is a second level in terms of the kind of services that will be delivered to the farmers and, of course, the buyers as well. We're talking about a system that will be looking at these warehouses to see that they fit within the desired standards, the desired industry standards, which of course have now become public standards, and that they also meet the expectations of the buyers, particularly in terms of maintaining quality, providing the assurance of the quantity itself. And of course, once you get a piece of paper or a receipt that is from the WRS, that receipt is supposed to guarantee the commodity within the specific warehouse. Correct? And once you get that receipt, it becomes like a collateral. Your merchandise becomes a collateral. In other words, and this is a system that our parents are very used to, particularly in the days of coffee, the days gone by of coffee, that you took your produce to the warehouse, you got a receipt, and with that receipt, it could give you credit. You could go and pay for services, you could go and pay for products, you could even pay school fees. So it's somehow reviving that system of providing farmers with collateral, providing farmers with instruments they can go and get credit even from the banks or credit in services. And that is because it is backed by a system that provides assurance of the quality, of the quantity, and of the actual merchandise stored in the right conditions in these warehouses. Yeah.
It's proper that you have talked about the coffee sector, which was big in terms of using the warehouse receipt system back in the days of the Kenya Planters Cooperative Union. But a lot of farmers, they still remember how they lost their produce, to some of these institutions. And till to today, they are still bitter. How do you plan to make them understand that we are living in a new era, and this is a new organization, and their produce and their supplies are guaranteed?
Well, to begin with, where you do not have effective regulations, it's very easy to lose your way. If you take, for instance, driving even in this country, if we were not regulated in how we drive, you can imagine what chaos there would be on top of the current chaos, despite the regulations. So that was the missing factor in the houses, in the warehouses of the then day. And hopefully now with the act that was passed in 2019 and the regulations that accompany that act, we should be able to bring order which brings together the stakeholders, and collectively they have agreed this is the way they would like the industry ordered, right? And then it is our hope that once we inculcate the order from both the producers, the handlers, the transporters, and the buyers, then this fear of warehousing will be dissipated over time.
So as a council, what is your expected role in the whole warehouse receipt system value chain?
Let me step back and say, okay, if we take a value chain like maize, and you harvest your maize and you want to take it to the stores. For instance, we talked about the stores that are very well known in this country, the National Cereals National Cereals Board. These are the ones that are very well known. The first thing they would do is to check the quality of that maize, particularly in terms of the moisture content, because the moisture content, and if it's not checked, can lead to other complications. They will, of course, check for physical damages, infestation, and volumes, and other organic elements of quality. So once that product is taken into the warehouse, it then waits for a buyer to come along and buy it. Now, for that, to begin with, that warehouse needs to have met certain standards that are set by the government, particularly now from the perspective of public health and also food safety and all of that. So these warehouses are licensed, so to say. They're inspected by AFA, like I mentioned. They're issued with a license to operate. There's a warehouse operator, a professional at that, with very clear terms of reference in terms of what is expected of him, so that he can take care of the merchandise as he should while it is in his custody. So that is what was happening generally. And the buyers would come to the stores and they would buy their produce, and the farmers would keep bringing the produce. Now, the farmers would not get their reward or their return on their investments until their commodity is sold. And sometimes that would take time. We all know that farmers keep complaining they don't get paid on time, they don't get paid the right amount. So there was all that. It would not be fair to call it background noise, it was real noise. So what the difference between that system of warehousing and what the warehouse is bringing on board is the fact that the warehouses that are inspected and certified by the Warehouse Receipt Council will now provide that assurance where that merchandise is quality assured.
I know so far the government has released the silos that were previously owned by the National Cereals and Produce Board in five towns of Nairobi, Eldoret, Meru, and so forth. But farmers are yet to understand. So once you deliver your commodity to the receipt system, to the warehouse, so how much are you going to pay and for how long? And who determines who pays what? Because you have farmers, delivering different commodities. Others could deliver rice, maize, those kind of stuff. So how much are they going to pay, and who is going to determine this is the amount that you're going to pay? And number two, what happens if I deliver my products or my commodity, and then prices come crashing?
Let me start by looking at those warehouses and the fact that some of the facilities have been released to the private sector. We do have, even as we speak, the warehouses that are owned by the National Cereals Board, but we also have private sector, privately owned warehouses. So what NCPB has done is they have released something to the tune of a million bag space to private sector to uptake, to do trading with them. And this is because there is extra capacity in terms of these silos all over the country. So you have both the public and you have the private, the Cargills, for instance, of this world. And here it means that the farmers have a choice as to where they can store their products. They can go to NCPB or they can go to the private warehouses. Remember, a lot of our farmers are small scale. They can actually aggregate their products and collectively deliver it to whichever warehouse they feel they would like to do. And so that is what, in essence, makes the difference, because from there they can then either get the warehouse operator to sell, or they themselves can walk away with their receipt and go and actually do trading with that receipt. That's what makes the difference. Who determines what is to be paid for that service of storing the merchandise in the warehouses? Pretty standard. And what are these services anyway? If you go to NCPB, some of the services they provide include drying. You could deliver your maize and it's below the 13% expected water activity. So you'd have to pay a fee for that. They could also charge you a fee for putting a bag of your merchandise in the warehouse per a period of time. That could be another test. They will also look at aflatoxin levels. And if your maize does not comply with the levels that are stipulated, they can ask you to take it away. They would not allow it to go into the stores. So who pays for these services? Generally, it's the farmer who will pay for these services. And it will be, I think even in terms of the testing of aflatoxin has actually been standardized. There was a proclamation that it shouldn't exceed a certain amount of money. I'm afraid of quoting the exact figure now because I quite don't remember it. But there is a minimum fee to pay for that aflatoxin. There is a fee to pay for the storage. There is a fee to maintain the conditions within the warehouse. And all of this is not meant to stifle the business for the farmers. If they look at the final calculations at the end of the day, if they were to even spend 100 shillings, they would still be benefiting a whole lot more from a value-added product, so to say, that, as I keep saying, carries that tag of quality assurance.
So far, I know that there's a process to try and attract private investors to set up silos and warehouses for these commodities. How has been the response so far?
Well, what has been pleasing to the council especially is the reception that we have received from NCPB itself. They're very willing to play game. In fact, they have provided warehouses that they have brought up to the standard that is expected. And some of these warehouses will be launched by October of this year, belonging to NCPB. They've also invited private sector to come on board and take some of the warehouses that private sector might find useful for their purposes and pay, of course, a fee. Then the other thing is, of course, the fact that you're looking at different commodities, different areas, rice in Mwea, Kisumu as well. You're looking at potatoes, which are now coming up very well. Interested in looking at warehousing the planting material as well as the ware potatoes, the coffee and the teas. All these products, all these products are now coming out to say, actually, this warehouse, and especially when it is at this level of accreditation, is going to be an answer to the losses that we have been experiencing as farmers. It's going to be an answer to the quality issues that we have been experiencing as millers or as processors. Because you remember only a couple of days ago we were talking about aflatoxin maize in the stores, in the supermarkets. This could be sorted out if we had a system of demonstrating that actually the flour that has been milled by certain millers are totally free of aflatoxin because they've gone through this kind of a process which can be validated at any point in time. So the response has been positive from both the farmers and the off-takers or the processors. But of course, we still have segments of people who are yet to understand. And by the way, we have also brought on board other stakeholders like the banks who are very, very keen to see how this is going to contribute to the reduction of the risk element in terms of financing, warehousing, financing, trade of agricultural products. So we have a bit of mixed reception, but I think it's more weightier on the ones that are supportive.
Do we have, so far, apart from the NCPB, do we have any other private sector player who has been licensed to be an off-taker?
We do have applications from private sector warehouses like Cargill, which is a big one, and a couple of others. But this is an ongoing initiative. We're reaching out, and we expect to see establishment of quite a few. And also the other ones that are showing a lot of interest are the counties themselves. The counties are saying they want their own warehouses, which would be under their control. Farmers in their cooperatives have also shown interest either in leasing the NCPB warehouses so that they run them as private entities, or in putting up their own. So there's a lot of interest, and this would be fantastic. You also have proposals from people who are using other technologies, like the hermetic technologies for storage. So all these initiatives are coming out perhaps as a response to this whole approach of mitigating against destruction of produce because of poor storage.
Mm-hmm. When the council was being launched, and the agriculture minister was very categorical that one of the other ways that farmers are going to benefit from this system is that it's going to cut off the middlemen, the brokers and the cartels, from the system, because now you don't have the pressure of selling your commodity because you don't have storage. But when you look at other countries that have put to trial this kind of a system, you're talking about Uganda, you're talking about Tanzania, you're talking about Malawi, South Africa, they are still battling with the issue of brokers and dealers, and cartels within their value chain. How do you plan to deal with this as a council?
Well, there are two ways of looking at these players in the value chain. They do play a key role in terms of aggregation. They do play a key role in terms of, sourcing widely and also sourcing different commodities at different times of the year. And they really do know where to go for what commodity at what time of the year. And one would hope that at some point we can actually professionalize aggregation We can actually make it part of the value chain, because if you think about the small-scale farmers, to be able to have produce that they can take to a warehouse would take quite a few farmers to come together and aggregate the products. It takes some logistics that need to be put in place to move that commodity. And this is where the brokers or the aggregators or the consolidators have been active. I was about to use the word useful, but unfortunately they have sort of, that space has not been regulated. And because it has not been regulated, it has carried the potential of becoming rogue. But I believe that if we were to look at the whole value chain and to see that we inject order into that value chain, there is a role for everyone to play. For the farmers to do their thing, for the logisticians to do their thing, the aggregators to do their thing, and the storage, and of course the processors and the millers. So there is space for everyone to play as long as we bring order.
Look, the whole point is eventually to have a commodity exchange, akin to the coffee exchange or the Nairobi Securities Exchange, where you can buy your shares and sell your shares. Have we made any steps towards the realization of this dream?
Indeed, the machinations to put in place the COMEX are in place, and it is really a question of time as to when the COMEX comes on board. The COMEX is then supposed to take the merchandise or the produce from the stores and put it into the trade space, so to say. But in the meantime, we're working on market linkages as we wait for this COMEX to become. And when it does, then it will ease the whole process of trading, so to say. But that doesn't stop the farmers and the traders doing business among themselves today. And it also brings on board even more order. And the fact that issues of governance are also taken care of in that process.
But it's proper to say that, for a warehouse receipt system to function properly and, of course, to benefit other players, it's proper to have a commodity exchange whereby, I'll be willing and I'll be in a position to sell my commodity, to the highest bidder. How long are we likely to wait before COMEX is operationalized?
Very difficult question, and I don't think I want to make an attempt to answer it. It's not within, it's not within my remit, but our expectations are high.
I know, of course, this doesn't fall within your purview, but it somehow affects your operations, in a great way, and so the two must move in tandem, and when you engage with, your parent ministry, which is the Ministry of Agriculture, and of course the Ministry of Trade, which is also supposed to play a role in helping set up, the COMEX. What are they saying?
In actual fact, we have discussions between ourselves, and we look at the challenges that are facing us, mainly to do with the resources to put that commodity exchange in place. But in the meantime, we have agreed that as we put the systems in place with the Warehouse Receipt Council, and these systems, like I said, are the systems to audit those warehouses and to issue these licenses. We are doing that through a registry at the moment, so that very soon you can actually go to this registry and you can see which warehouses have actually been issued with the warehouse receipt. And that the COMEX would then take it from there. They would take all the warehouses that are certified or accredited or issued with this particular receipt, and then take on the trade from that perspective. But in the meantime, as we wait for COMEX to come into play, trade business will still go on.
You're talking about enlisting the services of our financial providers who will use this receipt, to advance loans to farmers or to give them a credit. So far, how many banks have opted into this platform?
We actually have a group of about 6 banks which have shown interest, and at the moment they attend a lot of our meetings with with the warehouse operators or with the farmers. And we're going through a process of sharing information in terms of the processes that are being put in place. Actually, the WRSC has engaged an expert from Ghana who's very experienced in the business of warehousing. And he's been training the staff at the Warehouse Council Receipt, but also bringing on board these banks who have shown it.
And of course, for this whole system, I mean, to be successful, farmers must be onboarded and, of course, buy into this idea, own it and fly with it. So far, almost 1 year down the line, how many farmers have you managed to bring on board or have managed to buy this whole idea?
How many farmers have we been out there and spoken to? Like I mentioned, and even as we speak now, the management is out there working with the counties. Very fortunately for us, the counties have become a very important conduit. We go through the counties, we go through the CECs, agriculture, and the government administrative arms like the commissioner offices and the chiefs, so that we get the message across to the farmers. I couldn't give you a specific figure, but I can tell you that the word is out there. And we can see that because we are seeing reactions to WRSC information, reactions that are both positive and negative. And with time, we hope that the positives will outweigh the negatives as the information goes penetrates deeper among the farmers.
Before I let you go, I mean, the success or the failure of this whole system, you know, is rested on the burdens of your council. What do you plan to do to ensure business continuity and, of course, the success of the warehouse receipt system in this country going forward?
Business continuity, business growth, business productivity improvement. And like I mentioned a little bit earlier, we're working very closely with the stakeholders, providing information, sharing information, getting a feedback as well. And this feedback is going into the processes that we're developing at the moment, coming up with manuals, coming up with communication strategies. At the moment, we're going through our own strategic plan to help us prioritize our activities over the next 3, 4, 5 years. And with that in place and with all the networks that we are creating at the moment, we should be able to make quite an impact. And I'm very encouraged, as I said, that we already do have both farmers, both off-takers, processors who are very keen to get this going. Stakeholders like the East African Grain Council, the Cereals Growers Council, the Maize Millers Association, not maize millers, Millers Association. We have a lot of people who are very keen to get involved. And it's just a question of time before all of this comes together and we can see that ecosystem growing and actualizing that whole process of warehousing for and credible and providing quality assurance.
Very good. Jane, asante sana for joining us on Inside Government, of course helping us to understand where we are in terms of rolling out the warehouse receipt system in this country.
My pleasure, Brian.
Very good. Jane Ngige is the chairperson of the Warehouse Receipt Systems Council, joining us here on Inside Government to help us understand, of course, the role of the council and, of course, what they plan to do to help the growth of this system in this country. And, of course, you have heard it from him. This has been Inside Government. Thank you for your time. We do this again on Friday next week. Until then, good afternoon.